There are a lot of different kinds of matter in this world. Matter comes in three states: solid, liquid, and gases. Matter is made out of particles. So if you zoom into matter, what you see is they are made out of these tiny balls or these tiny spheres, and we call these tiny balls and tiny spheres particles. There are a lot of different types of matter, as you can see here. For the helium gas that is inside this Zeppelin, it looks like this. The particles of water look like this. The particles for wet sand look like this. And the particles inside tea with sugar in it looks like this. So matter has different types, and this is what we're going to talk about in this video lesson. In this video lesson and also in the next video lesson, we are going to talk about the three types of matter, which is elements, compounds, and mixtures. This is part 1 of the video lesson, and you will get to see part 2 probably next week or the week after. In this part 1, we are going to talk about two types of matter, elements and compounds, and then in part 2, we're going to talk about mixtures. So in this video lesson, we are going to go through three things, and these are the things that you should be able to know by the end of this video lesson. So we're going to go through what is an element and compound, or in other words, the definition of element and compound. And then we are going to look at something that is called a periodic table and how the elements are arranged in the periodic table. And then finally, we're going to look at some examples of elements and also compounds. So what are elements? Elements are substances that are made from one type of atom. So here, this is a diagram showing an element of matter. As you can see, the balls, or what we call in science, the particles that are shown here, they are only one color. So that means there's only one type of particle here, and this is an element. If the matter or the substance is made out of one particle, we call the particle an atom, if there is only one. If the substance or the matter is made out of more than one particle joined together like this, so you can see there are two particles joined together, we call these molecules. So atom means there's only one particle for that element, and molecule is when you have two or more atoms. And in both pictures, these are pictures of elements, because on the left picture there's only one type of atom, which is the red atom, and on the right side there's only one type of molecule, which is the blue molecule. So these two are elements. Elements are divided into two categories: metals and non-metals. So what do metals look like and what do non-metals look like? We will look at the characteristics of these substances next. So when it comes to their appearance, metals are shiny while non-metals are dull. So that means non-metals are not as shiny as metals. When it comes to what they look like at room temperature, so at room temperature, that means it is around 23 degrees Celsius. For metals at room temperature, they will be in the solid state. They are usually solids. For non-metals at room temperature, half of them are solids, half of them are gases, and one of them is a liquid. What about the density of metals and non-metals? Metals tend to be heavier, so that means it has high density. Non-metals tend to have low density. When it comes to the strength of these materials, metals tend to be very strong, that means it's very hard to break, while non-metals tend to be weak, or they are easy to break, so they are not as strong as metals. Metals are malleable, so that's just a word that means they can bend without breaking. So malleable means that you can bend them, so you can bend metal. While non-metals are brittle, so that means if you try to bend non-metals, it will break. For example, glass is a non-metal, so if you try to bend glass, the glass will break. Metals are good conductors of heat, while non-metals are poor conductors of heat. What does that mean? That means metals heat up easily, while non-metals, they do not heat up easily. Let me give you an example. Iron can heat up really fast, while rubber heats up quite slowly, or it doesn't heat up at all. Metals are good conductors of electricity, while non-metals are poor conductors of electricity. So what do I mean by conductors of electricity? Electricity can flow through metal easily, while electricity cannot flow through most non-metals. For example, copper is a good conductor of electricity, while rubber is a poor conductor of electricity. That means electricity cannot flow through rubber. Metals are magnetic material, so that means they are attracted to magnets and can be turned to magnets, while non-metals are not magnetic materials. So that means if you put a magnet close to a non-metal, the non-metal will not be attracted to the magnet. For example, if you bring a magnet to wood, which is a non-metal, the wood will not be attracted to the magnet. But if you bring iron to the iron will be attracted to the magnet. When it comes to the sound, if you hit metal, the metal will make a ringing sound. But if you hit non-metals, the non-metals will make a dull sound. And lastly, the types of oxide that they will form. Metals will form basic or alkaline oxides, while non-metals form acidic oxides. Let's look at some examples of elements that you can find in the world. This first element is what we call copper, and you have seen copper before, probably in wires. Copper is a reddish-brown metallic solid. It's a good conductor of electricity. That means electricity can flow through it very easily. It is ductile. That means you can stretch it and turn it into a wire. It is resistant to corrosion, and it is strong. So copper is a type of metal, and it is an element. Next example is silver. Silver is also an element, and it is also a metal. Silver is very shiny, and it looks metallic. It is a good conductor of heat and electricity. It is also ductile. So you can often see silver used to make spoons and forks. You can also see silver coated to glass to make the mirror much more prettier. The next element is carbon, and carbon is a non-metal. You can use carbon to make diamonds, and once it becomes diamond, it is very shiny. It doesn't conduct electricity, and it is a very hard substance. The next element is hydrogen. Hydrogen is an element and is a non-metal. In fact, hydrogen is a gas. It is the gas with the lowest density, and hydrogen is quite explosive if you mix hydrogen with oxygen. So if hydrogen comes in contact with oxygen, it can explode. So these are just some examples of elements that you can find in the world. So you might be asking, how many elements are there in the world? So let me show you. These are most of the elements that you can find in the world. So there are a lot of them, over 100 elements. and all the elements are arranged in this table here. So this is what we call the periodic table. And we use the periodic table to refer to the elements. As you can see, the elements have their own symbols. So let's say for copper, the symbol for copper is Cu, whereas for iron, iron is also an element, the symbol for iron is Fe. The symbol for aluminium is Al, and the symbol for carbon is just C. So each element has its own symbol. The horizontal rows of the periodic table are called periods. So this is period 1, this is period 2, this is period 3, this is period 4, 5, 6, and 7. Let's say copper. Copper is in period 4. The vertical rows of the periodic table are called groups. So this is group 1, this is group 2, this is group 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So for an example, carbon is in group 4, whereas here an element called sodium is in group 1.